Well, since the recording was started, I'll just jump in and say, everybody, welcome to the January 2025 koha-US Cataloging Special Interest Group, and Happy New Year.
Morning, everybody.
Fred kindly sent me an email, and I jumped into the Mattermost chat with the Koha community. I will drop a link to that into the chat in a moment. There was a discussion about how to arrange a small theological library of about 2,000 volumes. And the person posting the question was wondering about using the CCode field and perhaps the shelving location field or other. They don't have the books classified in a system like Dewey Decimal. I've only had one pot of coffee today. Okay, I'll be honest. Uh, and so I thought I'd throw open the discussion to how do people use the CCode field if they do?
Well, NEKLS uses a combination of shelving location, item type, and collection code to classify materials. We use three basic shelving locations: adult, young adult, and children's. Because I mean, it's just a field. It's called shelving location, but you can do whatever you want with it. So we break all of our materials down that way: adult, children's, and young adult. And then we use item type to define, book, video, that kind of stuff. And then collection code defines, it could be adult video DVD or adult video Blu-ray. And then the call number is what tells you where in that, section it is. And I've worked at other libraries where it's, where they do kind of the same thing, but it's item type, then collection code, then shelving location, or and that's you do anything you want with those different fields. You just have to be consistent, is the most important thing. Set it up one way and then can be consistent about how you do it. So I don't see any problem with organizing a collection by collection code as the main way of organizing it. You just got to find a way to be consistent about it.
Yeah, most recently he said he'd changed collection code to location. They decided to move all my codes from CCode to LOC instead. I'm sure I could have directed CCode to display in the item shelving location field, but that made more sense to use the one already there. In my own collection and in my library's collection, I started out not really knowing what I was doing. So I put in item type as reference or reserved, etc. My own collection: fiction, nonfiction, cartoon book. Is it possible to search under something other than iType? Or make up it circulation rules, something other by iType, because our reserve books don't go out. Reserve books go out for 2 weeks. Reference don't go out. Journal stacks circulating.
Yeah,
Goes out.
Item type is you are able to set item type to circulate or not circulate.
Right. Circulation rules are defined by the location. There's ways to define it so that it's the way we have it set up is it's defined by the library where you are checking the item out at. the patron category, and the item's I type. Those are the three things that define circulation rules. So collection code has nothing to do with it. And there have been talks about adding functions to the circulation rules where you can set circulation rules by item type. And that just makes me reach for the bottle of Tums, because right now we have like 50 libraries, 40 patron categories, 35 item types, and over 100 collection codes. So that could be, each time you add something to what controls collection or circulation rules, you're adding another multiplier in there. So I'm dead against adding any more ways of making the circulation rules table, even wider than it already is. But item type is definitely part of the circulation rules. It's a lot easier if you only have one library, because then you've really just got patron category and item type are what define the rules. So
Yeah,
or even
and
better,
that's
one library with a collection of I think our library here is under 10,000.
yeah, I actually could have more conceivable. There's more possibilities for circulation rules here than there are items in your collection.
Yeah. Also, with my home collection, I bought the book. I know what it looks like. I sort of have things sort of grouped together, like the mass market paperbacks or in their own bookcase. The cartoon books are against that wall, except running out of wall. So that's easier. And sorry, Heather, I think you were about to say something before I interrupted.
It's all right. I put a link in the chat to a part of the manual that shows how Koha can use the CCode field to for color. And I thought that might be useful because the poster in the Mattermost chat was discussing how they currently have their shelving arrangement is by color, like a colored sticker and then a subcolored sticker. So it could be like blue, green, red would guide. So the CCode might be useful for the that first largest primary color. The way my public library uses something like collection codes, they're not on Koha, are for things like nonfiction, fiction, and these broader categories of materials that could be shelved in various areas because they have, for example, children's nonfiction and adult nonfiction, and maybe you want just nonfiction and you don't care what age it's pitched at. Or DVD. There's DVDs in every section, sort of thing. Or a video recording. A video recording could be a movie you stream, or a DVD, or a Blu-ray, that sort of thing. Oh, and in the chat, someone asked what channel in the Koha chat the discussion was in. It was in the town square, and David posted a link. Thank you.
I was looking in the cataloging channel, and because it's about cataloging, but it's just in town square. So
we're everywhere. Yeah, I used to work in a theological library. It was a medium to large size one, and so I was thinking about that for overarching categories that were important, and there were theology, of course, but also philosophy and history of religions, comparative religions, poetry, art. So these were sort of the overarching categories I could think of that might be important in such a collection.
Oh yeah, mostly bees then.
Yes, lots of B's. Lots and lots of B's in the Library of Congress classification system. B being religion, theology, philosophy. Lots of D for history, D, E, and F. N for arts, P's for literature. Well, thank you for the ideas. Post any other ideas in the chat or chime in. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to bring to the group today? Yes, Margaret.
I'm not sure if this is going to be too complicated if I get answers to how to do it, or if I can just maybe just give it up. I don't know. We are not members of OCLC. We bring our records in one at a time from Z39.50 and spend a lot of time stripping out fields that we don't want. Is there any way, seeing as we do this one at a time, is there like a framework or something where we didn't have to bring those in at all? They could not come.
Absolutely.
Is that possible?
Except you were going to use MarcEdit instead of koha.
Yeah.
Yes, MarcEdit is one way to do it. I believe the Marc modification template can be applied. David.
I was going to say, because I was going to ask a question about this later, but there's a thing called Marc overlay rules, which you can make automatic changes to records when you import them or edit them. So if you don't want X field and subfield, you can say delete this or change it to something else. So the name is quite confusing because until I thought, this lets you automatically change things when you import or edit a record. So that's one way. So that's under administration, cataloging, Marc overlay rules. But I found it hard getting my head around the concepts because I'm not a cataloger. But anyway, that's one way, maybe. I haven't used it, so I've tested bugs, but I don't know when anyone else has used it or got their head around it.
I know about it, but I haven't gotten my head around it, that's for sure. But yeah, I was also going to suggest the Marc modification templates, because if you know that every record you're bringing in, you don't want specific fields there, you can just, I think you can even apply Marc modification templates to things that you're bringing in, depending on how you're bringing them in. I don't remember if you can do that with the Z3950 editor, but I'm trying to bring something in right now. And I'm trying to look at I'm trying to do two things at once, so I'm probably not going to do them very well. But the Marc modification templates and the Marc modification tool will let you say, if you're bringing in records and they all have like if you wanted to get rid of the 500 field on the records you're bringing in, you can tell the Marc modification template to go through a list of records and remove the 500s from all of them. That's probably not a field you want to delete, but that's the kind of thing it can do. Or if you want to eliminate the 245 on every record you bring in, that would be an insane thing to do, but it would be possible. But I'm looking at the overlay stuff right now to see if I can remember how to use it. So,
Margaret, we use macro. We use the advanced cataloging editor, and we're always putting in a local subject heading of either new books or new AD and the year and the month. And then I've got added in there all of the known fields to me that I just don't want in my record. And so when I run the macro, it'll delete out that whole list of things. Now that doesn't always get everything, but it gets a lot.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
There's also a way you can like set up an xslt sheet that you don't want to do this, but like you can set that up in the Z target settings, and then whenever anything comes in through there, it can delete things at that point. I think there's an example out there somewhere, but I can't find it. But that's like the complicated way. I like the macro idea because that uses like the GUI, and if you're using the advanced editor, that makes sense.
Yeah, and we are. So yeah, that would work. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the macro is also a very high quality approach because you have a human seeing it, checking it, seeing if there's anything else in the record. But the Marc overlay that David mentioned might even be a good first step for things that are very automatic to save some work, and then you could do the macro if you wanted super high quality work.
Yeah, I think we can look at that and see what's going on with that. But okay, now I have hope. Thank you.
Let us know how it goes.
I will.
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to bring to the group?
On a related topic, when I'm doing replace record via Z3950, is there a way to replace only certain fields? So I was trying this with one book, and it's a slightly different edition, even though the same ISBN. Now, my way of doing it, which is the complicated way, be to get everything from MarcEdit and then just extract certain files and import those. Is there an easier way?
It's my experience that replace record is replace record.
Okay, so I don't have the easy way, but I have the way.
You're using it, you're saying Z3950, Fred.
Yes.
I feel like that's part of what the Marc overlay rules were for, was to like protect fields when you were doing that. But I've not used it, so I can't speak to it.
I'm going to put a link in the chat box to where to find the documentation for the Marc overlay rules. I think that Bywater did a Monday Minutes on it, and I'm going to look for that too.
I've tried to move all the really copy-specific information to the 952, including multiple 952Zs, which condition or whether it's mass market or dust jacket or tattered.
Right, the 952 being an item record field, and the subfield Z, I believe, is the public note.
Yes. And even though there's just one Z field shown, you can add them easily and have a straight line between each one. Can't remember how to do that.
When our things like that get really long, we're a special maritime history museum library. I will sometimes just put a 590 in the bibliographic record, which is a local note field, something like the Research Center's rare copy is number 524 of 600, bound in half cat, it just gets really long. And we are an OCLC library. If there's something that is particular to our copy that I want the world to know about on OCLC, I'll put that in a 500 field with a subfield 5 with our NUC symbol, so that if I've done the original cataloging record, so it's a unique item, that 500 field with our subfield 5 indicates this is local pertaining to us information, but it's something that everybody might want to know about. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to bring to the group?
I've got several questions, but I'll let other people ask ask away. So yeah, but I'll start with one, and I'll share my screen. And this is a bug I worked on, and I just wanted to get some feedback. And and hopefully sharing screen will. So I haven't done this with. Right, cool. Now my monitors are named the same, so I might get the wrong one. Oh no,
we are
got the right.
seeing editing program, the Perl DPI.
Yeah. So what I did is there's a bug. Most people here use Marc 21, but there was a bug for the help links for UniMarc. So UniMarc EFLA no longer provides field level help. They just got lots of PDFs and none that specific to each field. So that all the links are broken. But anyway, that's not quite. But one thing I did change is, so I'm not sure whether that's big enough, but everything's got a question mark and then a dash and then the tag, the field. So what I was going to change it to, and so hopefully that screen has changed. And if you can see that, so I've made the question mark like the advanced editor. So the help link is the bracket in that. And I got rid of there's always seems to be a dash. If I go back to the other screen, there's a little dash before the mark, the field label. So does anyone have any strong objections to that? I was just trying to make things a bit more consistent, but I'd be interested in people's feedback.
I would say it's
really
easier. No, it's easier to scan and find the field and or the question mark if it's completely uniform and as clean as possible. So I do like it without the dash. The way I'm reading it right now with the question mark tucked next to the tag, the 041, is that I'm going to get help for the 041.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, if the question mark were tucked next to the words, like Library of Congress call number, I would wonder if my help was gonna, it's like I like it next to the tag. It says to me that's gonna give me help for the tag.
Yeah, it was only sort of a minor change because the advanced editor, for those who use it, the question mark is in brackets at the bottom of the thing. But anyway, yeah, if any of you've got any strong objections, I'll just see what happens on the bug. But yeah, so yeah, it's quite minor, but I don't know whether it makes any difference. But
it looks a lot cleaner to me. What is the bug number?
Oh, that's a good question. 31019. Here, it's waiting for sign off. But the main thing, I shouldn't really do two things in one bug, but the main thing was to fix the broken links for Unimarc help. But then I thought, yeah, why aren't these the same? Why don't these look the same with the advanced editor? And what's that extra? Sorry, what's that extra dash doing in there? But anyway, we'll see what the feedback is, and if you've got any thoughts, that would be great.
You said you had other questions?
This isn't a screen one, but it's more, there's been a lot of questions lately on chat. Well, it feels like it to me because I don't know how to answer them properly. I'm inputting my Marc records, we're converting to Koha and you get the error, the import didn't work because, there's something wrong with your Marc record. And we don't really have any in-depth documentation because, that's normally part of your implementation. A lot of people work with support providers and, they know how to sort out most of the problems with your Marc records. But I've been trying to say your 942C, your item type needs to be there in your Marc records or it'll fail. For your item records, if you're any lookup values like, the home library and whatever, they all need to, the codes you use need to match what you've set up in Koha. Otherwise, it'll fail. And the other bit people, I find amusing is not the right word, but interesting is they'll have a go at importing 100,000 records without trying with a smaller, a sample first, or or just even manually adding some records and items, then seeing what the output is like and an export is like, and then making sure their Marc records match that. But I just really wondered if anyone had any other tips or any, there's various koha-US conference and other videos about, MarcEdit and importing your records. But does anyone have a go-to resource that they would point someone to? Otherwise, I'll definitely add it to something we should add to the Koha documentation because it's something that there seems to be a spate of them lately. But does anyone have any tips or ideas, or, people want, it's obviously self-supported people. They want, how do I do this step by step? And can you solve my problem? Which it's not easy to, it's not easy to, to say, well, no, we can't help you.
It sounds very much to me like what this need might be is for some more detailed recommended implementation steps, for example, and put it in the manual. It's like, now bring in one record this way, or even to back up, in order to bring in a record, you must have this field 942C. You must have these fields in the Marc record matching your administration, the library. Now bring in one record this way. Now bring into, sort of test steps, for example. And if people do have resources they could point to for this, that would be, I think, a really good addition to the manual.
Yeah, I will try and create something. It's been on my list for a while, actually, but, it's been nice to just point some people to something and say, have you done all these things? And and do that. And yeah, and the other part of it is I don't think people look at the frameworks, that you have to set up your framework first, and then you have to set up all your basic parameters like your libraries and your item types. But if you don't do those, then you're on a hiding to nothing, really, aren't you? Yeah. Cool. So yeah, it's just those things. Okay, cool. Yeah,
I think for that, to a certain extent, there is a hint on the main admin page. It actually says hint, configure these items or parameters in the order they appear. And if you don't configure them in the right order, you're going to end up with problems like these. Like if you set up the patron categories before you create the libraries, then you're not going to, there's all kinds of, just doing them in that order is important.
Cool.
But yeah, bringing in a bunch of things with the framework's not fully set up. When you install a default Koha, there's a default framework that I think includes, usually the community is adding the new fields in Marc whenever Marc changes. And I don't know about Unimarc, but that's one thing that I've had encountered in the past is that our Koha was set up in 2008, and things have been added to Marc that haven't been updated in our framework. So I had to go in there and somebody carved away big chunks of our Marc default framework because they didn't know what they were doing, 15 years ago. They didn't realize that there would be future consequences when we tried to do other things. So I think that would be a good important step to make sure that people have all the frameworks set up and know what they're that they need to have things that the framework has to have the ability to add all the fields that they're trying to bring in from their old system.
Yeah, no, there was an interesting I think when you install a default Koha, you get to choose. You always get the default, but you get to choose whether to put in some of the sample ones like books and DVDs and stuff like that. There was interesting bug that got a bit of traction before Christmas, but not people actually working on it, but discussing it, was when you first set up Koha, that's the framework. After that, you need to manually update the default and other frameworks with the Library of Congress changes. And Carolyn from Libro has been doing bugs to update the changes like obsolete fields and things like that. But you don't get that only affects new installations. So there was a discussion about how can we, I guess it's a bit like the notices. You get the defaults and then they stay the same until you change them. I'll try and find the bug number, but how could we do something in the user interface so people could say, update my frameworks, the default framework or something, or at least show that these are the changes. So anyway. I'll try and find it.
That was one thing when I found out that our Marc framework had been carved to pieces. Our default framework had been carved up badly in some fields that when we did a catalog cleanup to add authority control, we found that we couldn't re-import the records with the updated data from our authority vendor because those fields wouldn't load into Koha because those fields have been removed from our default Marc framework. And so then I had to go in and manually add everything. And one of the things that I found is that you can't, I thought, well, I'll just go to a sandbox and I'll export the framework from the default framework from there and then import it into Koha. You can't import a framework. You can't overwrite the default framework in Koha through an import. So I had to go through and so what I did is I manually imported the default framework from a sandbox and named it something else, and then used that to copy bit by bit the different parts. It was tedious. Tedious is probably the only word to describe what that was. So, that might be a bug to open too for somebody if it isn't already out there. I think it might already be out there. I might have looked at it, is that there's no way to overwrite the default framework.
Yeah, I'm trying to find, I remember discussion about providing an updated framework based on the Marc updates and changes.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about, but my Bugzilla uh, search is not that great.
Would the default framework be updated with a new version of Koha? No? Okay.
I found a bug for change framework on overlay. And there have been a lot of new fields with RDA implementation.
I may have like to go back to importing Marc records. My experience is if there's a bad record in there, it just stops. Is there a way to figure out which record caused it to broke? Is it listed in a log?
Yeah, my recollection is it just says bad Marc record.
Yeah.
And then nothing else. So I don't think there's anything in the logs or anything.
Could that be a future enhancement?
Yeah, but yeah, I guess there's so many reasons why. How would you programmatically say there's something wrong with your Marc records?
Is that something that MarcEdit is useful for?
That's what I was going to say is, my experience with uploading large batches of Marc records is that you don't want to be too large. Like you don't want to do 100,000 records at a time. 25,000 is like the batches I think that I did from when we did our authority control cleanup. But what my experience has been, if you do run into an error with Marc records that you're importing, if you run them through MarcEdit, you can take the Marc file and ask MarcEdit to validate it. And what I've found sometimes is that you will look at a record over here before you validate it, and then you will tell MarcEdit to validate it and say it's not valid. Do you want me to clean it up? And MarcEdit will clean up the record and remove the bad stuff that is causing it to fail. And then you look at them side by side and you can't see anything that's different, which is weird. And then what you figure out eventually is that it's usually because there are line breaks in a field that shouldn't be in a field. I found that a lot with records that we import that don't load properly. Will be like the table of contents will have line breaks in it that cause the Marc to not load properly. Or the 500 is another one that has issues with that. So they look the same when you set them side by side, but MarcEdit can go in there and find the line breaks and remove them. So they look the same, but they're not the same. There's invisible stuff.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. Yeah, I remember testing a bug relatively recently. It was the command line script to import them, which was, I think if it came across a bad record, it would just stop. Well, in programmers talking about it just dies. And which is not useful. But I think they added something. I don't think it's made it into a recent version yet, to skip that record and then tell you later on so that you can go back and fix that one up. Or you can choose whether to skip. That was it. You could choose whether to skip bad records or that or finish and not complete properly. Yeah. Yeah, I think the other one was something to do with UTF-8 and validating, validating Marc XML to make sure it was at least complete as far as it could tell. But I don't know the bug numbers for those. But yeah, I guess there's a lot of reasons the Marc can be wrong. Unless you have a way to validate it, you're going to come across every, and I guess if you've exported your stuff from another system, there's good chances that it'll be systematic problems with your records. That's, yeah, I guess.
And if you're unsupported and you're importing from your old system, you're probably fairly new at this.
I just put a link in the chat to MarcEdit for those new to it. It's free software and it's amazing.
I have to say, when I've tried validating, it comes up with an awful lot of things that aren't sort of fatal errors.
It'll tell you if your Marc doesn't meet the standards, but it's not going to crash your import. It'll tell you. I mean, it'll tell you if it's going to crash your import. It'll also say, hey, this is not great Marc, essentially. But it'll still work. Like if you have fields that don't exist, it'll let you know. MarcEdit, one of the things that I've always found interesting about MarcEdit is it is free and it is available, and the guy that has created it is very responsive to people's suggestions, but it's not open source. But I did ask him one time about what happens if he dies, and he says there is a succession plan. There is a plan to to continue the software. I think upon his abandoning of the software, I think he has a plan in place where it will become some kind of open source product, but it's not exactly open source right now. So, but it is free.
It's Terry's source, Terry Reese. I don't think he sleeps.
Yeah, he doesn't.
There's a question Marc poses in the chat. I think you can edit those Marc validation files, correct?
I think so, but I've never messed with them because I don't know enough to mess with.
I found this random GitHub link from some random GitHub that talks about making your own Marc validation file, but I don't really understand what they're saying. And the only thing I found in Terry Reese's thing is it says don't edit the default files. I'm sure there's better documentation out there somewhere.
Apparently a wise idea in many programs.
I think what he means by don't edit the default files is create a second, take create a backup and create a second file. Just like everybody suggests with the Koha frameworks, is don't mess with the default framework, but you can use that to create different ones.
Or when making changes in general to Koha, make a backup instance and fiddle with that one. And when you break it, you've broken the backup.
Yeah, exactly.
just think it would be great if someone who knew what they were doing, and I don't, and Marc doesn't either, make a MarcEdit template specifically for Koha, saying this is the bare minimum you would need to validate to get it to go upload into Koha. Never mind the slightly dodgy Marc in other places.
I think that might be sort of what we were talking about with how to test your new Koha instance. Bring in one record this way, and it must have this, this, and this. Bring in 5 records.
Well, when I was uploading from the old system, and this was in 3.12, so it's probably changed a lot, I could upload without the 942, and it was fine. I don't know if Koha would spit it back now. But there are times when I'm uploading a fairly large collection. I have to go, okay, cut this in half, see if this will upload. Cut this in half, see if this will upload.
I feel like a general wisdom, at least for us, is that if there's no 942, or if it's not a valid 942, that's always going to cause a problem.
Well, it certainly causes problems when I'm trying to edit that record.
Yeah, it won't let you save it.
Yeah.
Did we answer all your questions, David?
No, I've got a few more, but there's a great discussion. But
We've got 12 minutes.
I haven't been to one for a while, but so yeah. Anyway, where's my list? I always have lists. I never quite get to them all, but I always have lists. Oh, this is an easy one, and I know you've discussed it before. The organization code, like that's the 40A. Obviously, you can get a code from the Library of Congress, but basically, unless you're sharing records with other, like central catalogs or other things like that, you can make up your own. That's a question mark. If you want to, or you can just not bother about it. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I do. What I've seen is that it's very, very, very typical for a new library, new catalog to say, this doesn't matter because we're never going to share our records. The future, more often than not, includes sharing your records. Libraries grow, libraries merge, libraries often are acquired. You don't know what the future can bring. And it's very easy using a tool like MarcEdit to say, add this 040 subfield A and subfield C to all our records. And yet Koha doesn't care if it's a standard abbreviation. Most systems don't care if it's a standard abbreviation, but it's a way to show that this record was created and originated here.
Thanks, Heather. So yeah, if people don't have one, at least they create something unique for their library, and then they can register it later if they really want to, I guess. Yeah, cool.
We deal with that in our system. the system, NEKLS has a code, but not all of our smaller libraries do. So if they bring in something and they need to change the code or update a code or add, I think it's subfield D is the record updated by, we just tell them, if you don't have a code, just use ours. So that we'll be the person responsible for their bad cataloging. So
thanks for that. Yeah, no, there's sometimes people ask on the chat or the mailing list, not so much the mailing list. Yeah. And the other one, which is, I hope it doesn't gratify, I'll just share the screen and I'll have another go. Right, I got the right one. I was going to fix a spelling mistake because there's too many cap in the. This is just about the descriptions under cataloging and admin, and I was going to fix up capitalization because everyone thinks bibliographic should be capital when it doesn't really. But then there's authority types, but it says it's frameworks, and so should that heading there really be Marc authority record framework rather than authority types? I know everyone's used to calling it authority types, but
no, please.
It's just a bit inconsistent to me, and I like my inner editors coming out, and I like to.
Every time I see it, it goes like. I want Marc bibliographic framework and Marc authority framework.
Cool.
Or change them both to the same thing, and frameworks, because there's more than one framework.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah, no, that was on my list as well. I was thinking, there's more than one, and yeah, cool. I can say Heather said we should change it. So,
and I think that's definitely. You should definitely do what Heather wants. She's the expert here on all this. Just make her happy, and the rest of us will be happy too.
And really, making the capitalization consistent would just warm my little heart, because in the paragraphs, catalogers are used to scanning and everything, and to have it, bibliographic, and then you down it in its Marc with your records, and it's like, oh, stop.
Cool, thank you. I'll go ahead and make that change. I was only going to change the capitalization, and then I thought, authority types are frameworks, but we call them authority types, and the manual calls it frameworks for authority. So yeah, I was like, oh.
Yes,
anyway,
and
cool.
if you could,
I'll do something to that.
Yes, and mention the bug in the cataloging thread on the Koha chat, and I will be delighted to chime in and or test and or applaud or yes.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't created a bug yet. It's just one of those, as you say, it's one of those things that annoys me every time I look at the page, and then I haven't done anything about it. So anyway, thanks. That's most of my questions. I think I've taken up enough this time.
Well, we have a few minutes left. If anybody else would like to bring anything to the group.
Well, I've got a question for David. What time is it there? Like 6 in the morning?
It's coming up to 6 o'clock. Yeah, but I'm normally up early, not quite this early, but I was awake. So.
Well, thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. I do listen to the recordings when it's daylight. It's daylight savings here in New Zealand, but it's winter in the US, isn't it? And Europe. So yeah, so not daylight saving. I think normally it's about 3 or 4, which is a bit too early for me.
Any other questions, issues, topics?
I just wanted to put a call out. If there's anyone that attends these meetings that's pretty good with serials and their prediction patterns for popular materials as opposed to academic journals, I'd love to talk with you after the meeting. I'm running into confusion with, you know, magazine subscriptions that publish like 8 issues a year and don't really follow, like they follow a pattern, but not a standard pattern. So if anyone has any tips or tricks, I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, yes, please. And I would say chime in on the Koha chat. Off the top of my head, there's a way with Mana, I believe, to share serial patterns.
Yeah, there is in Mana,
And
you can share them, but I always question the
yeah, we're not
quality
finding,
of what you get from Mana.
yeah, I'm not sure about quality, but like we can't use them the way that they are. Like we're like, our customers will want, they want the week and the year and the month. They don't want volume number and any of that. So then it becomes a game of trying to figure out like how to get the July issue skipped every year and only the July issue skipped. So that's, therein is the problem.
Not just popular, the New England Journal of Medicine, which is the one everybody reads, has just gone from 52 to 48 issues.
Oh
And they
no.
raised their price.
So how are you getting that to predict out?
I haven't done it yet.
Okay.
And I'm hoping you'll share your results.
Okay.
I put a link in the chat to the Koha wiki for the serial pattern library, and I'd like to put a shout out for everyone to please contribute. And I am always happy to edit the wiki and put things on the wiki if needed for people. And I'd like to thank David for helping me with my MarcEdit wiki page. I believe if I saw my email correctly that you had fixed it up a bit.
Yeah, I only did one, so I just interested in your feedback. Yeah, using steps for doing things rather than a bullet point. And I was trying to get the images to display. So if you think that's better, I'll change the other one. It's a bit more fiddly in the wiki because you have to put things into a table, but I think it makes it easier to scan and follow the steps. But
yeah, I'll definitely take a look at it. And oh yeah, someone would like a link to that in the chat. Putting that in. Oh, great. Thank you, George. Yeah, this is part of the effort that I've been working on to take things that are specific only to third-party software out of the Koha manual and get them into the wiki. And to have in the Koha manual only things directly related to Koha with links to the wiki that apply to third-party software exclusively, like OCLC Connection Client, MarcEdit. The idea being that they're not only not really Koha, but also the wiki's sort of easier to update when these things change and develop as they do, and to put a lot more information that Koha users might be interested in on the wiki. Well, we're at the top of the hour. I'd like to thank everyone for attending. Our next meeting is the first Thursday of February. I'm trying to look at it. I believe that will be February 6th. And as usual, see you online. Participate in the Koha chat. You can join our group, and we have a cataloging email list through koha-US. And thanks a lot. Happy New Year.
thanks, Heather.
I don't think I can stop the recording, so we're still recording. We'll just
Like
say
it goes to
goodbye.
Liberty leaves, so see you all later.
See you. Bye-bye.
Bye.